During the last week, we've celebrated the Feast of the Epiphany. This is the time when the Church traditionally thinks about the visit of the Magi to the infant Jesus, bringing their gifts of gold, frankincense and myrrh. Until last Christmas, over the last few years, I've had the opportunity to do some work with classes at the younger end of primary school in the run-up to Christmas, talking about the Christmas story and making Christingles or other crafts. I've often taken with me on these occasions a casket of gold chocolate coins, a bowl of frankincense resin, and a bottle of myrrh essential oil to help when we get to think about the gifts that the wise men brought. The frankincense and myrrh are always particularly interesting to both the children and their teachers. Not many people have seen or touched or smelled frankincense and myrrh, and it makes me smile to hear the wows that are uttered when these items are passed around for them to explore. These are strange gifts indeed, even to us today, and I'm sure they seemed just as strange then, even though people would have had a better understanding of what the items actually were. I've seen a cartoon depicting 3 wise women visiting the new baby, bringing nappies and baby clothes, a casserole and a bottle of wine, infinitely more practical for the new parents. But I often wonder what Joseph and Mary did with the gifts. They're usually depicted as having come in ornate boxes and caskets. Did they get to hang on to the gift boxes? Did they keep them somewhere safe? Did they need to use the gold? Did they ever find a use for the frankincense? And what about the myrrh? Was that saved for Jesus, or did they need to use it on another family member before that? Thinking about these gifts has reminded me of one of the icons that we explored at the Women Ministers retreat I participated in back in November. There's a traditional Russian icon called the Women Myrrh-bearers, depicting an angel guarding a tomb empty except for the shroud, while a group of women carrying myrrh gather around and look on in disbelief. The women are there to offer a final act of love and service to Jesus, to properly prepare and anoint his body for burial. And you can sense their confusion and disbelief when confronted with the angel and the empty grave clothes. At the top of the icon, you can see Jesus walking away from the tomb, but the women don't notice him. Their attention is taken by the angel and the tomb. I've known probably most of my life that the gift of myrrh to the young Jesus foreshadowed his death. But this connection has hit home particularly in the last week as I've had that icon in front of me on my desk, and as I've remembered what I learned about the tradition of myrrh-bearers in the Eastern Church. This is what the Russian Orthodox Church says about it. Myrrh-bearing, selfless caring for the body of Christ, is not only participating in the sacraments, preaching the gospel and confessing the faith, it's also doing that myriad of things which are so difficult because they require our sacrifice. For those who sing in church are myrrh-bearers. Those who clean the church are myrrh-bearers. Those who prepare the flowers for the services are myrrh-bearers. Those who look after the garden are myrrh-bearers. Those who sew vestments and altar coverings are myrrh-bearers. Those who bake prospera are myrrh-bearers. Those who prepare tea or donate food or wash up are myrrh-bearers. Those who donate icons or make offerings of money are myrrh-bearers. Even those who simply come and pray for the salvation of all are myrrh-bearers. All of these things are very church-centred, and of course it's possible to think about caring for the body of Christ in this way. For a start, we often use the phrase the body of Christ to describe the church, a body made up of countless Christians, all with different gifts and talents and callings. But there can be a tendency in church life to see some roles as more important than others. And although we often say that every job is valued and appreciated, we don't always show that in our actions. I like the way that the Orthodox Church gives all of these the broad title of myrrh-bearing. It feels to me like a much more concrete way of expressing something that can be hard to get our heads around. That whatever we do in the life of the church, we're doing for Jesus. If we're doing anything because we want to be noticed or appreciated, or because somebody asked us and we felt too awkward to say no, or because we felt obliged to do it, And if we're doing anything out of a sense of duty, but really we resent it, and if we grumpily and ungraciously go about our business, then we're in it for the wrong reasons, and would be much better stopping and letting someone else take over, someone who does feel a calling, and who can do it with love and care. I'm sad to say that I've been the recipient of many grudgingly offered cups of coffee after a service, although I have received many more that have been given with a generous and loving spirit. When I get the bad ones, I really just want to say, look, you clearly don't understand anything about hospitality, and you're clearly not making drinks out of love for God or anyone else, so please just take your name off the rota and don't put everyone else through the agony. In the last 9 months, many of the things that we might have usually done in practical ways for the church have not been possible. But that doesn't mean that the need for myrrh-bearers is any less. We just need to think about it a bit more broadly. I like the fact that in my icon, Jesus is walking off unnoticed in the background. In the distance, you can see a town or a city, and Jesus is pointing and walking that way while looking over his shoulder back at the women at the tomb. You can imagine Jesus incognito and anonymously taking part in the daily life of that place in the distance, slipping into the community and wondering if he'll be recognised. So yes, the church may be described as the body of Christ, but it's by no means the only way in which we encounter Christ bodily today. As Matthew reminds us in his Gospel, when we feed the hungry and clothe the naked and care for the sick and visit those in prison, and he doesn't just say those who are unjustly or wrongfully imprisoned, but everyone, we're doing those things for Jesus. We encounter Christ's body in the world today through all who are suffering, struggling, overlooked, undervalued, marginalised, misunderstood, neglected and uncared for. It's not quite so easy to care for Jesus in the world today in a hands-on way. Close contact is necessarily very difficult at the moment, but there are ways in which we can show our love and care by supporting those groups and charities who have safe systems in place to offer the practical help that people need. And perhaps we all know people who are finding life in a third lockdown very difficult, and to appreciate a phone call or a card through the post or a little care package hygienically delivered to a doorstep. I'm going to keep my icon prominently displayed so that I can see it every day and be reminded of those myrrh-bearers. My challenge to myself at the start of this new year is to intentionally think about how I might take my place alongside those women in the icon. How can I change my focus so that I think about each little thing that I do for someone else as myrrh-bearing? Will it help me to see Jesus more clearly in others if I can develop the habit of thinking of myself as a myrrh-bearer? More than ever today, the world needs myrrh-bearers, not ones who are going to shout about it, but those who, like the women in my icon, go quietly to the tomb to show their love for Jesus in their actions, even though they thought at that point that he was dead and would know nothing of it. At the start of a new year, we're often encouraged to make choices and resolutions about who we want to be and how we want to live in the year ahead. Well, I've decided I want to choose to be a myrrh-bearer. So does anyone else feel like joining me?